Set? We're all set. Okay. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I will entertain a motion to open a public hearing on to amend the zoning code to provide for the use of natural resources inventory and establishment of a new hospitality overlay district, providing for inns and adaptive reusage.
Yeah, before we
I
open
need
it,
to have-
Sure.
we need to open the public hearing.
Are your mics on? We're having a hard time hearing.
Yes, they're on.
so I'll make a motion.
Yeah, second motion. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Is the public hearing officially
Yeah, it's
open?
open.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for being here for our public hearing for the proposed legislation for a hospitality overlay and the adoption of our town's natural resources inventory. Before we begin, there should be a sign-up sheet over there right under me. Is there a sign-up sheet over there?
Yeah, it's going around.
Okay, great.
It's on
So
a
please write
clipboard.
down your name and your address. Just your street is fine. So just for background for all those who are here, tonight is a public hearing, meaning that this is the opportunity for you, the public, to comment on this legislation if you'd like to. The town board is here to listen. If you have comments or questions, we welcome them, but we will not be engaging in a back and forth conversation. Be assured, however, though, that your comments will be taken into account as the board deliberates on this law. There will be no vote tonight on this law. We have still a few more steps to take before we reach the point of a vote for this law. And again, we want to get your feedback. Before I open it up, however, I'd like to introduce the consultants and legal counsel that we have used to prepare this legislation. Our counsel, Jim Stout and Taryn Ramey, are both joining us by Zoom. Hi, Jim. Hi, Taryn.
Hello.
They are from McCullough, Goldberger, and Stout. Jim heads the firm's municipal practice group, which includes representation of the villages of Larchmont, Croton-on-Hudson, Bronxville, and Hastings-on-Hudson. He's also represented a number of other municipalities, including the villages of Scarsdale and Ossining, as special counsel. He's the past president of the Westchester County Bar Association, and he's a former co-chair of the Westchester County Bar's Real Property Section, which is their real estate law division. As his CV would indicate, he sort of specializes in municipal and real estate law. Nan Stolzenberg is also here with us by Zoom. She just waved. You all may remember Nan as well as Jim from the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee's work. Nan is the founder of the Community Planning and Environmental Associates. She has had a career as a planning consultant specifically for rural communities and specializing in environmental planning throughout the Hudson Valley and upstate New York. She concentrates specifically on planning needs for small and rural communities. She's been inducted as a fellow in the American Institute of Certified Planners and is a certified environmental planner. Could I ask that people just not speak if they don't mind? If you need to speak to each other, if you wouldn't mind stepping outside, that'd be terrific. Nan has achieved the planning profession's highest honor, being named to the prestigious American Institute of Certified Planners College of Fellows. She's an expert seeker practitioner and is much sought after for panel discussions and trainings related to seeker and environmental review. She's the principal author for New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation Seeker Workbooks. She's truly a seeker expert. We are very grateful to have this incredible team working with us on this legislation. And as I mentioned earlier, both Nan and Jim were the advisors assisting the Comprehensive Review Committee on their hospitality report. I'd like to give some additional brief background on how we got here for those of you who are kind of new to this or new to this process and the legislation or the Comprehensive Review Committee. 3 years ago, the town appointed a Comprehensive Review Committee. The group was tasked with examining hospitality in the town of Washington. The committee was comprised of town residents with different areas of expertise and different perspectives. I don't know if anybody, well, Margaret Schneibel was on that committee, who is here. I don't know if anyone else from the committee is joining via Zoom. I can't tell.
I'm here.
Oh, Tim Mayhew, who's the former chair of that committee, is, I guess, joining us as well. They engaged in a process that took over a year, filled with focus groups, open houses at the firehouse, and both paper and online surveys. Fellow town board member Joe Rockford was the town liaison for this committee. The results of that exercise revealed that an overwhelming majority of the town were clear that they wanted hospitality. They wanted it at a certain size and scope and in certain locations. The village, the area outside the village, which was designated as from around College Lane to the monument, and the area of Washington Hollow. Residents were also very much in favor of adaptive reuse meaning taking existing structures that are already there as opposed to building something new. The town adopted the committee's report as an addendum to the comprehensive plan in April of 2023, so 1 year ago. And over the past year, the town has worked on a natural resources inventory along with the village of Millbrook and the town of Clinton. That was recommended by both the hospitality report and the 2015 comp plan. Over the course of, in tandem with that, this group has worked, the town board has worked on several drafts of this legislation. We have had, this is our third public hearing on it. Our first draft was circulated to all the respective boards. We got feedback from the planning board and the CAC, which we responded to. The CAC's comments were responded to by Nan Stolzenberg, our consultant in detail. We addressed some residents' concerns. For example, residents on College Lane were worried about traffic coming through their neighborhood if an inn were to be established where the abandoned Daytop is now. We listened to those concerns and changed legislation to require that their main entrance be on 82 and 343. Others wanted the NRI adopted before this was adopted. So we adopted a resolution in January of this year, which identified the NRI as a resource for town board committees to use as a reference. This legislation that we're proposing, which includes the NRI, will make it a law the town board and planning and zoning boards must refer to this document when making land use decisions. I also wanted to address some misleading information that has been circulated throughout the town, that the town is somehow approving 100 rooms. You may have seen those red signs around town. And I just wanted to provide some context for that. The town has identified 3 areas where hospitality would be allowed, subject to site plan review. In those areas, if and only if they are adaptive reuse and the structure and the surrounding environment supports it, they could have no more than 40 rooms. These areas are where the Cottonwood and the Millbrook Training Center are, which is considered one part of the overlay. The training center had, and I checked in with someone who's lived here for their entire life, when it was an inn and restaurant, had around 20 rooms, he said. The Cottonwood currently has 20 rooms. Daytop currently has 37 rooms. In short, the town is not approving or adding any more existing rooms in adaptive reuse spaces that have not historically already been there. In fact, back in the day, the Cottonwood, the Millbrook Training Center, when it was an inn, Daytop, when it was also an inn prior to being a rehabilitation center, and Altamont, if you recall, Altamont had over 10 rooms, were all operational. And in addition, there were several more bed and breakfasts in town. So we have historically supported more rooms in the past in this town than are currently being proposed. And again, there are no proposals before the town, it's just zoning. I'd also further point out that the village currently has zoning In a large majority of the town, in certain areas of the village, certain areas of the village, that particularly right across where Bennett College is, on the Bennett College side, that's part of the village, that allows for 20-room inns with accessory uses. So by the logic of whomever put up those signs, currently the village could have, I suppose, hundreds of hotel rooms, and it doesn't. Also, the town of Washington currently allows bed and breakfasts of up to 5 rooms throughout the town. According to our assessor, we have at least 1,000 houses in our town, at least. So if we're going to apply that same logic, if everybody applied to have a B&B in their house, I suppose we could have up to 5,000 rooms. So I just wanted to clear up this what I perceive as misinformation before, anyone wanted to speak to those questions. I hope that that's helpful. So with that, I'll open up the floor to anyone who has a comment. If you would just come up, introduce yourselves, and you can use the microphone. If you're on Zoom, if you want to raise your hand, I believe Margaret Schneibel, our resident Zoom expert, is in there and can help put somebody on. So with that, I will open it up for comment. And again, we're not engaging in it. We are just, there's so many people to speak. We're just here to listen and take down your questions and comments. You want to just pop up to the microphone, thanks, and just introduce yourself, and we'll make a list of who's speaking.
My name is Alec Pandalea, and I live over on North Shanks Road, 3 miles north of Troop K. I just want to say that, including tonight, Leslie, the board has done a really good job at communicating with all of us throughout these past number of years about this whole thing. My only other comment is, and so I applaud you for that. My only other comment is that when we lost the Cottonwood, and we have lost the Cottonwood because you can't stay there essentially, as far as I know, it was a great place to go and stay. It was a quality place. It's where we stayed before we moved up here 25 years ago. And losing that, I kind of castigate the investors who bought it and then basically sold everything out from the rooms, and we're left with the hotel in Dover Plains at the bottom of 343, or the lovely Willows Motel in Amenia to have our guests stay at, which really I wouldn't put anybody up at. But I'm pretty down on the people who bought Cottonwood and the training center. They didn't do us any service as far as I'm concerned. So again, I applaud the work you're doing. Thank you for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Susan Mancuso, 160 Church Street. And I just want to talk about a few aspects of the law. I mean, first of all, with regard to the 100 rooms, that is a statement that was made by your attorney, and that contemplates the full build out if you were able to do the Cottonwood, and the full build out with Daytop, and the 20 rooms at the Bennett College location. Now, the one thing that hasn't been discussed in all this is the fact that 2 of these locations sit on top of a Zone 1 aquifer. And there really has been no environmental review done of these, of what would happen to build out these. In fact, your environmental assessment says, for one thing, there's no wetlands on these sites, which is just, it's flatly wrong. There are wetlands on each of these districts. There are floodplains on the Cottonwood. And what your environmental assessment says is that there's no flood risk on any of these locations. So this has to be looked at carefully, and there's not been a careful job done. With regard to the land impacts, there's actually no evaluation of what would be done, what the impacts would be if this was fully built out. And that's how the town board should be examining this environmentally under SEQR. They're supposed to be evaluating the maximum build out. So as I understand from your attorney, that would be a 40-room hotel. And you would have to determine in the Cottonwood, for example, can the Cottonwood sustain a septic system for 40 for 40-unit hotel, and not just that, but a restaurant, a spa, a gym, a bar. I think you can have a tennis court by right and a pool. So all those things have to be evaluated. Now, if your environmental review had looked at resources that were recommended by your natural resource inventory, and that would have been, for example, the USGS soil survey, which you can obtain by just looking in your computer, you would see that for the Cottonwood site on the Zone 1 aquifer, that the soils are listed as being very limited, meaning that they probably can't sustain septic use on those sites, or they can only do it with a substantial overhaul that honestly, I don't quite understand the details of it. But according to this rating, this very limited rating, it says you can expect poor performance. Now, is that the kind of situation that the town should have for its water supply? You have the same situation on Bennett. The town board in its environmental review says that there's going to be adaptive reuse. And because there's going to be adaptive reuse, and by that, what they mean is that there's going to be certain structures that will be reused to house the guest rooms. Not the accessory uses, though. Those can all be new construction. And the Bennett site, as best I understand, there's only one site that's potentially available to develop, and that's the vacant 2.4 acre site that used to be the Bennett tennis courts. So there's not going to be any adaptive reuse there, and yet the town board in its environmental evaluation hasn't even looked at what a build out on that site would look like. And that site too, like the Cottonwood, is located on a Zone 1 aquifer. And if the town board had done its environmental review correctly and had looked at the web soil survey online, they would have seen that the same situation existed. All those soils are very limited classification for septic purposes, and also, I should say, for floods, for water infiltration and other things that would be done with the soils. This project has other issues. You don't have to be any water expert. If you just go down by the Cottonwood after it rains, and it's happened at least twice in the past few months, that place is flooded almost up to the parking lot. That also happens to be a very sensitive area. It's an area that is a rare habitat an important habitat for rare species. And yet there's absolutely no discussion of what would be done to ensure that that habitat would be maintained. This site, in fact, this project, this whole process actually began as a result of the Migdal proposal. The Migdal proposal, you may recall, involved, I think, 77 hotel rooms that would have been in an existing structure, so they would have been adaptively reused, and 31 cabins, plus initially, there was going to be 23 residences and glamping.
Susan,
And-
can we limit it to our project?
Well, I am going to bring you right back there. So I understand. So that project, people got rightfully very upset about. And as a result of that, that triggered this whole thing that we've done over the past few years about revamping the comprehensive plan, doing a hospitality study. And as a result of that, here we are with this law. This law, the environmental implications for this law are far more egregious than Migdal. Ultimately, Migdal, as I understand it, they took the residences off the table. And the primary concern environmentally with respect to Migdale was the fact that it was up gradient from the aquifer. So here you would have a property that would be up gradient from the aquifer that would have on 350 acres, 108 potentially. And again, this was potential, like the situation we're looking here, potential. So we'd have 108 rooms on 350 acres. These three sites in total are less than 50 acres. I think they're 46 for the site that's located on Bennett, assuming that we have only that 2.4 acres that can be developed, there would be 20 rooms plus the accessory uses, the restaurant, the spa, the bar, the, whatever else that could be done. And those properties, and so the density on that property is far less than Migdale, which I think would have been like 3.25 acres per hotel room. And then similarly with Cottonwood, you have 40 hotel rooms plus the accessory uses on 9.3 acres. So that's a lot more dense. And both those sites are on zone 1, directly on top of aquifers, not just up gradient, directly on top. So none of these things have been explored adequately by any means. And so I hope that this board will go back to its environmental assessment and do it the way it's supposed to do. They have no data concerning what the build out would be, and there is no way to evaluate the implications. With regard to the Daytop parcel, one of the things that should be considered is that this parcel has been reported as having to rely on an off-site water source that's located on College Lane and South Road, this wetland at the bottom of College Lane.
I didn't know.
Now, should that parcel have to rely on off-site wetlands to support it? And there's also been reports that there have been failures in the septic field. So this needs to be addressed. There's nothing that indicates that anybody gave it a glance when the environmental review was conducted. In fact, the environmental review and the potential adverse impacts discussed in there had nothing to do with this project. And it just talked about, which was more like a scare tactic to the public, about what would happen if people don't adopt this. And it has nothing to do with evaluating the actual environmental situation. So I urge this board to step back, do the right thing, do the proper environmental review that's required under the law as a maximum build out, consider the flood risks, consider the wetlands, consider the habitats for rare species, and whether or not the sites that you have identified, even though superficially because they did house these uses at one point, are they really suitable? For example, the Cottonwood was built in 1970. I don't think your zoning code was adopted until 2008? So it's a non-conforming use. The board had the opportunity to classify that property as commercial and it didn't. And there may be reasons for that. Maybe because it was on top of the aquifer. And all the other sites are also zoned residential, and there may be reasons for it. And also, there's not an indication in the surveys that the town board spent a lot of time conducting, collecting, analyzing that supports this immense amount of hotel rooms. In fact, what the public did support, they supported some hospitality. I think everybody here would like to see some hospitality. But the size that they looked at was and supported by a majority as very appropriate was 4 to 10 rooms. They did not even support 20 rooms really. So I don't know how 20 rooms got as like the preferred number from the raw data in the surveys to the hospitality report. It's just not there. And there certainly is absolutely no support for 40-room hotel. And there's only Midland support for adaptive reuse. There's not this clamoring people want adaptive reuse. What people spoke vociferously about was that they wanted that the town avoid environmentally sensitive areas by 85%, finding that was very important. Adaptive reuse, 35%.
Could I ask you to sum it up? We have a lot of
I apologize.
People
Excuse
want
me.
to
Let
see
me
it.
do that. So I'm sorry for taking your
No,
time. I think I said it all.
appreciate it.
All right. And so thank you for your time. Please, this needs to be looked at in a lot more detail. Thank you.
Didn't like what she said. That's the woman who wrote that thing.
Hi, my name is Lauren Sidney. I live on Burbank Road right here. And I too want to thank all of you for your hard work. I know it ain't easy. I just want to make sure that we don't turn into an asphalt jungle. And what I'm talking about is I noticed, and obviously I'm not an attorney, that yes, 1 car for every room as far as parking is concerned, but I didn't see anything about the restaurants or the amount of diners that are allowed to be in the restaurants, because that typically as well is 1 car per table in a restaurant. So although you might have parking lots that say for 20 people, since there are 20 rooms, if a restaurant is going to be there, that means that that particular parking lot is no longer 20 rooms. That is now 40 rooms. So all that, these beautiful inns, we don't want this big, huge asphalt jungle somehow to be near there. So it was just a little point of omission, and I just want to make sure that you all are on target for restaurant parking as well as staff parking. I didn't see anything about staff parking. So it's all about the parking lots, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone on Zoom?
I'll say something. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Mandy. I live at 23 Deheim Road, and I would like to
What I do?
reiterate what Alex said. Thank you. I really appreciate all the time that you and the CPRC people put into all of this. And I do believe that you are following what the town wants. So I support this resolution and I support your work. So thank you.
Thank you. Any speakers on Zoom?
Hello? Do I have the floor for a minute here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we just.
Okay, I'd like to make 3 quick points. Not being an environmental scientist, not even an armchair environmental scientist, I won't comment on the work that others have done. But I am an economist, and I think all of us have to remember that we live in a country whose wealth is due to the freedom to use our talents and our properties in the best way possible. And the theory is in the service of everybody else. And that is the nature of the creation of wealth. And I think it's important in this community to remember that. The third point I'd make is that my wife and I had a wedding of a daughter here in Millbrook. It was a number of years back, and the groom was an Englishman, and we had the wedding up at Mashomek, and there were dorms over there that all these 30s went into because there was absolutely no room anywhere We were booking rooms in Rhinebeck, we were booking rooms in Connecticut, everywhere else. And the Cottonwood actually was the salvation because we were able to get 10 guests in there.
Hey, Walter, can
It's
you hear me?
important for this
Walter?
community to remember how little we have by way of hotel rooms. And that ought to animate a lot of the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom?
Sure. You have Tim Mayhew here.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Gary, how are you?
Good.
I guess, I have watched this process for a long time. I wrote down the following note that I'm going to be sending into the board, and it said, "Dear Town of Washington board members, I would like to thank you for your service. Our community is deeply in your debt for the enormous amount of time and energy you spend on our behalf. I have closely watched your proceedings on the hospitality overlay over the last several years. Zoning in general, and hospitality specifically, is a thorny issue because it requires balancing competing interests. This requires a process over an extended period of time with tremendous transparency so that the full gamut of opinions can be heard and considered by all. I believe in the following rule: good process dictates good results. Thus far, the town board has followed this rule. I have been impressed by the process that the town board outlined back in 2021 to consider what to do about hospitality. The creation of the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee was a thoughtful first step, and allowing that committee to hire its own planning and legal advisors set up a constructive arm's length governance structure. I have been equally impressed by the fact that the town board has followed this process pretty much to a T, as outlined in 2021. Not too aware of too many situations where that actually happens. I have been pleased that the town board both pursued a natural resources inventory and cleverly found a third-party grant to fund it. Got to give snaps to the town board for that. The fact that the whole process has taken years has shown how seriously the town board has followed its process. Lastly, I'm delighted that the town board chose to hire both of the advisors that the CPRC selected, Nan Stolzenberg and Jim Stout. Nan and Jim are consummate professionals, and they are impartial. This has provided continuity to the CPRC process, and it also supports the town board with the benefit of balanced, excellent, and impartial counsel. There were two clear findings from the CPRC work. First, folks in the town of Washington overwhelmingly supported the idea of hospitality in the town. Second, folks want the hospitality to be small in scale and in areas that have pre-existing density. I am grateful for all of the energy that you guys have put into this. And I do believe that thus far, your process has dictated a very viable proposal, which I support. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Anyone else?
Anyone else on Zoom? Anyone else in the audience?
Yes.
Okay.
My name's Fletcher Coddington. I'm a long-term resident. And I lived here in 1955 when Hurricane Carol came through. And the water stopped at the Cottonwood Inn Foundation. And the Finellis that lived on top of the area that used to be a construction zone
above the trooper barracks. It took them 2 weeks to get out of their house. And the trooper barracks would be underwater for 2 weeks. So would the Cottonwood Inn. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome.
Howard?
Hey, Adam Demuth, 82 College Lane. My concern is a traffic study for the road. If ingress egress is going to be out of 44 there, if you have tanker trucks pulling up, you're going to need a wide berth, and you ultimately will probably have to widen the road. Has any of that traffic study been taken into consideration for an ingress egress by the board?
No. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll wait till everybody else gets a chance. I'd like to speak at some point.
Excuse me, my name is Durkee. I'm
Hi.
from Rossett.
Durkee,
Live
how
here a
you
few
doing?
years. Gary, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I know this, we've heard a lot about water and those are, I think of this as it's important to have some housing, but people have to look at the cost. So what we've created is this island of incredible beauty around here from the open space. That's what people come here. They love this open space. And, you know, we heard at length about the water impacts and the sewage impacts. Those are all hidden impacts. What we haven't heard about are the traffic, you know, the population impacts, and there are going to be costs associated with those with roads. But just the density of people coming in to view this is going to put a lot of strain on our infrastructure and overall on our whole general population. And, you know, you've got to really think about that. Do you want to have, like I say this all the time, I look at where my father grew up down in Rockland County. You have like a little tiny intersection. You have a 5-minute traffic impact problem just trying to cross a country road because there was no zoning. Nobody thought about, well, I built this days in over here. What's going to happen on this little tiny side road over there? What are the impacts? They don't, you know, it wasn't calculated. And the other thing is, you know, I think back at Mystic, right? Do you want to have the main sort of arteries coming in populated with, you know, whatever kind of inns? You know, you drive into Mystic, Connecticut, it's a beautiful little town there, but it's just in on every road coming into it. You know, you got to think about that, what it looks like. And, you know, getting back to the Daytop, that was Ramble Hill. My father used to work there when it first opened, and it was more of a bar than an inn. I think the inn was the Three Pheasant Inn with Miss Odell down in the corner down there, but everybody went to the top there and drank. So I'm not, you got to check how many people actually stayed there. That's all I've got to say. So don't take that. All right. So watch the traffic. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anyone else?
Just one little thing. Until these places are built, for those of you that are looking for out-of-town place, the Millbrook Inn is lovely. And it's sitting right there.
Well, and the Millbrook Country House and the Airbnbs and the other, everybody's always saying there's not empty. We do, I applaud all of our proprietors of rooms that currently are in the village and town and just.
Do you want to speak? Do you want to?
No, I just,
Okay.
I just
Got it.
Okay.
applauding these businesses.
Thank you. Anything else? Howard, you want, oh,
Let
Adelaide.
everybody else go first. I got
Adelaide, go
All
ahead.
right,
around there.
Go ahead.
it's Adelaide, I think everyone knows who I am and why I'm here, but.
So that you can be heard.
Because people, I don't know if people. else
Yeah,
can hear.
give me one of the microphones. so people can-
Mike, I can speak loudly.
Okay, hi, I'm Adelaide. I live on Stanford Road and I've been pretty much, I know a lot of people here know me as the person that's done a lot of work to protect the water and this gorgeous countryside that we're so lucky to be inhabiting. So we worked for 8 years to get wetland ordinances and we tried to study the water as much as we could. And there's still a way to go. And no one is saying that anyone did anything wrong. This isn't personal. It'd like sort of be nice to sort of take the heat down on it and say that to some people, they feel like they've been communicated well. With other people, without a newspaper, without a newsletter, people don't know what's going on. And I think that it's easy to say, oh, when you're on the inside of the process that you're communicating well, but it's sometimes very unclear on the outside what's going on. So I would just reiterate many things that were said here tonight, including from Susan, an attorney who's done a lot of the environmental research and the legal research, that we need to really be careful with what we're doing with the water. And we can't make arguments that we're going to do an environmental process in one place and not in another. And I think that despite a lot of assurances that we're looking at these environmental things, some of the forms and processes that are actually in the files and in the records don't really indicate that. And the CAC letters that, Leslie, you said you've responded to, I don't see a response, or that Nan did. I didn't see a response to those letters. And they were really some of the most substantive, really well thought out criticisms of this law. And I see, and they're buried on the website somewhere, and I don't see a response to them anywhere. So I would just say that we have to look at that stuff seriously if we really want to protect what we have.
What's that? You are hooked up to the town meeting.
All right, everybody. So my name is Dr. Paul Schwartz. Many of you know me. I have been a full-time resident of the town for 27 years, raised my family here. I served on the planning board for 9 years, 5 years of which I was the chair. And I'm what's called a newcomer to the town of Washington. So given that background, first, unequivocally, the time and effort everybody puts in is beyond expectation and never will receive sufficient accolades for. So thank you, everybody, for doing what you've done. Couple of concerns. Regardless of your perspective on this, and I'm from the perspective that we need additional hospitality. At the end of the day, it's going to cost the town money. Dirk Jan made a quick reference to it, and the reality is that means it's going to fall on us unless the town board makes appropriate accommodation. I have implored the board for many years now to pass a hospitality service charge or tax. We all pay hospitality service taxes wherever we stay around the world. It's something that is doable. It's something that we can get through Albany, and it will, to a certain extent, assist in offsetting the costs to everybody in this room and everybody on Zoom. Because whether it's a light or a road, it's going to come back onto the town. As far as locations and cost, the junction of 343 and Old Route 82, where I own property, every single time it rains, not floods, every single time it rains beyond 3 inches, we have water in our basements, we have water in our backyards, and probably 3 to 5 times a year, the county is rebuilding the culverts and the traps right at that location. So it has to be done beforehand, because what will happen otherwise is, on top of the use now, you're going to increase the use. You're going to increase the water content with the septic. When we approved the septic system over by Doc Hammond's, we required them to put an above ground system because the water table was so high. So the septic can be handled, but it has to be evaluated beforehand so that it gets done in the correct manner. Because the reality is the PERC, the ability for the ground to absorb the water in certain areas over by Bennett, over by the Cottonwood, is very, very limited. And that's nature. So all of these things have to be considered beforehand. Otherwise, we're all going to clean up the mess. From a perspective of overlay, when the overlay was proposed back in the day, there was a huge argument against overlay. And quite frankly, those arguments are correct. An overlay can be perceived as capricious and arbitrary. And once you open that door, it can be a situation where the courts are going to decide. And unfortunately, the first pass on the courts are Poughkeepsie. The second pass is Brooklyn. And when a judge in Brooklyn looks at the number of acres involved, they scoff at it and they just approve it. And I can tell you from personal experience, it's a costly process for the town. And our taxes are responsible for paying those bills. And given the 1,000 houses that are here, according to somebody's comment, the 1,000 houses, do the math, that money adds up quickly with legal fees being what the Honorable Stout charges. No offense intended. You deserve everything that you charge. So I implore you guys to consider a zoning alteration rather than overlay alteration, because a zoning is a much greater threshold. And once you have a zoning in place rather than an overlay, it really is a difficult thing to get a variance on a zoning. It's a difficult thing to get a rezoning. So I think it's a consideration that before you go with the overlay, you consider alteration in zoning. Thank you.
I guess so, Howard. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
My name's Artie Kasak. I'm a newcomer to this village, okay? I moved here 5 years ago. I moved to the area, the town of Washington, 5 years before that. I moved here because I wanted a small town feel. I've lived on Long Island. I've lived up in Wyndham, Massachusetts, Wyndham, New York. I've lived in Boston, Massachusetts. I've lived in New York City and many other areas. And I watched small towns like on Long Island where I was as a kid, and I'm 81 years old. I could play ball in the streets and a car wouldn't hit me. Okay? If you put in hospitality, it's wonderful. Everybody loves hospitality. But I've looked at that Cottonwood Motel for the 10 years I've lived here, and no one's needed it. There was no one ever using it. It's vacant land. And I've never had anybody who come and visit me, and I come from a large family, ever have a problem in staying someplace to be able to come here and be comfortable. My house is always open. I love this. I would hate to see hospitality ruin the small town feel of this area, which I don't think is being addressed. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Heaney. I live on 2 Bonnicky Road. Thank you for giving me the chance to respond. I just had a couple of comments. Migdale has been evoked a couple of times, and I'm not trying to bring this bad memories or anything, but just as sort of like for a little bit of history, one of my old teachers, professors used to say, what is now past was once future. So we all know what happened with Migdale, but there was a time when we didn't know what was going to happen with Migdale. We didn't really know what was going on. And what we learned was that really what was going on was that Will Guidara and a bunch of New York City investors wanted to build a housing development. And he got pushed back on by us, by a lot of people in this room, who told him that we don't want a housing development. It's not legal and you can't do it here. And by the way, it's also on top of the aquifer and it's going to go into everybody's drinking water, et cetera, et cetera. And I, along with many other people, spent way more of my life trying to fight that particular project. Why? Because it was going to destroy the character of our community. It was not a hotel, okay? It was a housing development. That's what he and his investors wanted to do. This situation is born out of that situation. You know, what we came out of that with, if there's one thing I really remember hearing from the community at these meetings, was from the business owners, our business owners, our restaurant owners, our shopkeepers, the people that make our life good, right? Like without them, there's no town. And what they said was they needed more people. They needed more traffic. They needed more customers. Okay. And how are they going to do that? They needed some hospitality, a place to stay. You know, as was pointed out earlier, there used to be places to stay. You could stay at the Cottonwood. You could stay at Ramble Top, or, you know, whatever. I don't even remember the name. What was it called? Yeah. I mean, basically there was capacity, and people could stay at those hotels. And they could come into town, wander around, have a nice bite to eat, go shopping, what have you, right? That doesn't exist anymore. We lost it. Okay. So then what the board did was they went out and they asked everybody in town, okay? Everybody in town had a chance to weigh in on this. And a vast majority of the people said, we need something. Okay. I'm not going to repeat what everyone else said, but we need something, right? And yes, we want it to be controlled, and all the concerns that have been brought up here tonight, traffic, water, septic, the environment. These are all valid concerns. These are all handled, right, by our planning board. And what their job is, though, is to listen to us and make it possible for entrepreneurs and investors, anyone who wants to take a shot at it, and right now there is no one who has formally given them anything, can come out and say, this is what I want to do. And we can either show up with a machine gun together and shoot it down, say we don't want it, or we say, that sounds pretty good, right? So that's what we can do. And so I guess, you know, to me, I think sometimes it gets lost in the sauce that, you know, this, something what Walter said is that this is a community. We depend on each other to make this a livable and a beautiful place. And the fact that we're all here together and we're all making our voices heard is a very wonderful thing. It means that we all care very deeply about it. And even if we don't see things the same way, we definitely care about this community. And I would argue that most of us actually are very aligned in what we want to see for this community. There were in that survey, by the way, there were 30% of the people said they wanted nothing.
Right.
Okay. There's a lot of people who said, I want nothing. I want nothing to change. Okay. Adelaide, you were one of those people.
No,
I know.
I don't, no, I remember that.
But it was 30% said nothing, right? And that's valid.
Almost nothing.
That's valid. Okay. But 70% said something. So we have to do something, and we have to work together to do something. Okay. Otherwise, our community, we're not doing the right thing by our neighbors. We're not doing the right thing by our shopkeepers. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know that Nan unfortunately has to leave us at 6:30. So Howard, did you have something that you wanted to say?
I will trouble, as you know, getting around nowadays.
All right, for those of you who do not know me, there's probably a lot of you. I am not here as long as Fletcher or some of the people on the board, but I've been here a long time, and I have been involved off and on in different things. I was involved in as early as 1970 when they did a comprehensive plan. I sat in the audience and said a few things. My more recent involvement was with the 2015 comprehensive plan, which started in 2008, opened up at that point. But in between that, there was a 1989 comprehensive plan. And most of these plans had one thing they wanted. They wanted to preserve the town. I was on the land use committee, by the way, for the comprehensive plan. And we did the best we could to preserve what the town has. That was the motivation. It's in the minutes of the minute statement of what we want, the goals. And so I'm not going to talk so much about what other people said. There was quite a few different viewpoints here, and they were well said. I also on the CAC, I could talk about the environment, but I'm not going to do that either. Other people have done that much better than I could. But there are some concerns. Now, the first thing is when the comprehensive plan committee met, the review committee. Nan put out a survey at the end. It's called the final document. It was July 1st, 2022. And I'm going to quote from recommendation 1C because I think that's pretty significant. It said large hospitality uses, and this is their recommendation, not me speaking now. Clearly, large hospitality uses are not desired. Only 7% of the survey respondents indicated they feel 50 rooms plus are appropriate for Washington. That compares to 73% indicating that 4-room hospitality venues were very appropriate and 60% saying 10-room hospitalities are very appropriate. And then in response to the people who wanted to open up the comprehensive plan, there was a survey question, do you want to open up the plan or not? And 30% of the people said no. We like the town exactly as it is, which is a fairly good vote for, I think, a town, that people to like it that much. The other 70%, if I have the numbers correct, said they want to do something. They didn't say they want hospitality per se. They just said, let's open up the plan. I have something I'd like to discuss. So it's a little misleading to say 70% of the people wanted hospitality. A number did, but a number did not want that. If they had a choice, they would have said maybe it would have been 50 or 60%. So do we want hospitality to come, or do we want the leave the SDRs alone? Do we want something that would have been a different vote? The 70% were just asked, do you want to do something? And they had different, if you read the whole thing, there's a big list of things that people wanted. So hospitality wasn't on the only thing on the list. There was a huge list of that 70% wanted. So I'm not sure what the plan allows right now. I've looked at the plan in my head, and you can correct me when you get a chance at the appropriate time. I felt that they were allowing 3 structures, one on each of the zones. One structure would have up to 20 rooms. Two of them in the other zones would have up to 40 rooms. And that's where I see the 100-room number coming from. So I could be wrong on that. However, the other thing is that those are just numbers on paper. A 40-room hotel, or inn rather, with all the auxiliary things that were listed that could go as well as that, that would take up, in my mind, a pretty large piece of territory. And I don't know if people consider the numbers on paper as one thing, but what would it actually look like on the ground if it was there? Would it affect the neighbors nearby? Would it indirectly affect the town as a whole? So I think that number is too large, actually. I think we're better off starting with a smaller percentage and be cautious. This is another thing the plan said, by the way. Start slowly, cautiously, and if that works out, and they picked the Cottonwood Inn, by the way, as the first place to start. And they said, if that works out, consider going further. So I would say something to the board to please consider the following. Start with a smaller number, like 10 rooms for the inn, which was the original thing that most people wanted when they got on that particular subject, a 10-room inn. If you're considering adaptive reuse to start with, allow 20 rooms for that as a start and see how that works out. Because the question is, do we really need 100 rooms? Do we really even need 60 rooms here in the town? What happens during the winter or other times when nobody goes to these places? Maybe they go out of business or something in some cases, that some of them did. So what happens to the infrastructure? We wouldn't have the daytop thing coming up right now if it wasn't for things that happened in the past that left. So that's something to consider. I'm asking you to consider starting small. Start with 10, perhaps, for an inn itself, to build an inn. Start with 20 for adaptive reuse. See how that goes before you go any further. If it turns out you need more than that, you can go back and update the law. But if you already give a large amount of rooms out and people start their businesses and then they fail, you can't go back and undo the infrastructure. That's what I'm asking you. I'm not against it entirely. I personally don't think we need it, by the way, but I'm not against it. I respect other people's opinions. But I really think you need to be careful and start small. And listen to what Nan said in the beginning, when the whole thing started. Start with the Cottonwood Inn, start small, see how that works out. And that's what I'm asking you to do.
Bravo. Wrapping up, and I just wanted to reiterate, my comment at the opener, because some people came in later, that this is about zoning. There is no application. So when someone says we should start small, or this should be here, or traffic or other things, there is no application for any project right now before the board. There's not necessarily anybody who's going to be wanting to do the Cottonwood over Daytop, over across from Bennett at all. So it's sort of like, as I mentioned earlier, the village allows 20-room inns with accessory uses right now. Okay. And there are certain areas of the village that allow it. And the town currently allows up to 5 rooms in B&Bs. You have 1,000 houses. Presumably, someone could stand up here and say the town's allowing 5,000 rooms to exist in the town of Washington. It's sort of similar. What I would say is that we're trying to regulate those particular areas to give even more structure, because right now somebody for the Cottonwood or the Millbrook Training Center could apply for a special use permit, and there wouldn't be the same sort of direction and regulation that we're proposing. So anyway.
Well, if you're not conforming uses.
For clarification.
But they still have to apply.
Clarification on that, please, just for clarification.
Yeah,
The Cottonwood is pre-existing non-conforming.
I know.
So they can't apply for anything.
They can. They're
Okay,
currently.
And wait a minute, let me
Okay,
finish.
and I don't wanna get-
And the Marcells as owners
Yeah.
are the best thing that this town can possibly do is support them to reuse the Cottonwood, because otherwise it's gonna look like Bennett in not too long. The rec center is not gonna be a reuse. It's gonna be a tear down. That can't be. So we need them. We need to support them to be able to file their application. Daytop, someone made a comment about it being the Ramble Inn. It was a drug rehabilitation center, which they attempted to make a psychological release center out of. It hasn't been an inn for a long time. That too is falling down. We need things to be improved. Otherwise, we're going to have more of what happened at Bennett. The question is, how should it be done, in what fashion? And I think that foresight is what the board has attempted to do. I just think they need to broaden their scope, because whatever gets passed will then be utilized to the full extent of the law. And that's what we run into in the planning board. Everybody pushes to the full extent of the law plus 10%. So to kind of focus it in a manner that makes sense, I think now is the way to do it, to avoid problems in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, I think we do have to close up because Nan is leaving. We're leaving the public hearing open because we have not received comments back. I'm sorry.
I think Alana wants to speak on.
Oh, Lana's.
Oh, okay.
Hi, everyone. I'll be brief. I'm hoping that the town board would consider phasing this in. And what I mean by that is accepting one of the properties, and then if it's a success, another and another. And I'm hoping that the 343 Bennett area is taken off. I don't know how familiar most of you are with that area. There's some of the oldest building in the township. It's actually a quite charming area. And I don't quite understand how a 20-room building would fit with a restaurant and other things, including parking on 2.4 acres. And I'd also like to see more in the law about setbacks changing. I know that you're addressing things like lighting, buffer, but I'd like to see those more addressed. And also what percent of the acreage could be built on, including parking areas. So thank you. I know it's been a lot of work.
No, thank you, Alana.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. I just for, thank you all for all of your comments. We will certainly take them under advisement, and we are still waiting to hear back from the county and from the village if they have comments. There's a 30-day period, and the CAC. I just wanted to also mention that all of our underlying zoning, our environmental laws, our setbacks, everything is that's still in place. It's not like this supersedes any of our existing zoning. I also just wanted to mention, I know I read Jim's CV and Nan's CV at the outset, but we really have outstanding counsel who is walking us through this. We have not gone through part 2 of seeker. We have to do that. The town has to do that. With Nan, there's environmental reviews that still have to take place. And again, the hearing is still open until we get feedback from those other bodies. But I appreciate people's feedback and comments, and we will consider all of them. So thank you.
So, you know, I wanted to switch. I raised my hand. Oh.
And especially
Thank you, sir.
I asked.
So, you know, I think the other thing is we all know there are
There are not, actually, there are not, not to my knowledge. Maybe with the Cottonwood, but not any other way.
Just yet?
No, I don't, I think that was both away. That's,
Open.
I don't know, that's my understanding.
But regardless, so I think we just schedule more meetings for that. Because we didn't hear back from the county.
Yeah, right. I'm talking about, what do you want to do in the public hearing?
Okay.
So.
I've heard from a few.
When we
Well,
go through.
you know, we're,
The public hearing will close, right?
who do we have on the,
Yeah,
You can keep it open. is what I'm saying.
Jeremy Stigma.
Sure.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
What is
I mean,
this,
if you
sorry?
wanted
You
to-
mean not close it tonight?
You don't have to close it tonight if you don't want to. You can close it at the next meeting. It's entirely. up to you.
or we might have another special meeting depending, but because what we're doing, Jim, I don't know if he jumped up, but Jim already had told me we're going to leave the hearing open because we can't close it until we hear back from county and
Otherwise, we
the CAC, and I don't know, the village, it's 30 days, and the 30 days is not, we have heard from the planning board.
So we'd have to like reopen the public hearing.
Right.
Or re-advertise.
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
why I want to keep it open.
Plus, plus there may be some written material is still in the mail.
Right,
We're still
yeah.
getting that
Yeah.
delivered.
And that's also true. You can submit something in writing too.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important in a small town that everybody have the ability to voice themselves. What most on this, if we can have fixed that you can actually hear it.
You know, it's not an hour exaggerated because you heard Tim.
Yep.
It's actually on the other end. They have to turn their volume up.
Yeah.
So Walter needed to.
Yeah,
I
because
cannot
Tim
hear over
was
Yeah.
was pretty
Chrissy, I
clear.
think, got
Yeah.
most of it. We'll get it in the minutes.
But it's, I just think it's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
I think it was
that
just our friend
Maybe
whose volume
if
was
somebody
down.
says you need to get up closer to your microphone and
Yeah.
speak loudly, because I don't think it's, I think they assume they can be heard in the
Yeah.
participating in the public
If
discussion.
Walter wasn't going to
But we
wrap
can't.
it up, then we were trying to tell him to turn it up.
It just-
But I
because
think
it wasn't
also
only Walter.
it might be a good idea when people are speaking that we put them on full picture too.
Yeah, something, so
Yeah.
that, because we were all over here by nobody.
Yeah, okay.
So are we leaving this open?
Yes, we are.
we'll leave it
Yeah,
open.
we're gonna leave it
All
open
right.
until we
Let's
hear
get
back
on
from
Leave it
these
open.
other.
Um, it's- Joe's not here.
Doesn't sound like they're doing a full environmental review.
Regular,
Yeah.
but we also want to, I want to make this motion here.
Oh, yeah, okay.
All right.
Go ahead.
So what's happening is for the Oak Summit Road, the Bridge New York, we want to go in contract with Colliers. Made slight changes. Colliers has it. They're going to give it back to us, but we're not expecting it back until next week. So I want to make a motion to, when we get the Colliers contract back, and then if any board member wants to review it, but I want to make the motion that Gary gets to be authorized to sign the contract at time of delivery, and then Kathleen can turn around and scan and then give it back to them, and then Colliers can go ahead with what they need to go ahead with, because we received a go-ahead from the county authorized to proceed to preliminary design and right-of-way incidentals. And because this project is time sensitive with how we get our money back from the county, we would like to start as soon as possible with having Colliers start doing their work. So I make that motion.
So with that lengthy motion, I
Yeah.
second.
All right, everybody needs to understand. Okay?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So are we still on with Collier for that date?
Yes, and that is a separate matter. That is Killering Road.
Okay.
That is the 17th.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
All right, so I
Thank you.
do that. And then Joe Spagnola is not here, so I'll go ahead and give his report.
Oh, okay.
It starts off with FEMA, and I'm not too sure if I understand this entirely correct, but the Butts Hollow storm on July 10th of 23, New York State portion of $5,702 came in total reimbursement. So 39,917, which is 87.5% of total submitted. So I can't explain that.
That was that storm.
I can't,
He had.
In other words,
He prepped us. on
Lois,
that.
can you explain that? Is that, yeah,
It was for that unnamed storm.
Yeah.
So they submitted it and we were reimbursed that amount.
but which were we reimbursed? Do you know, is it the 39,917?
Both. All. We've gotten all of it. Portion of it was from the federal.
Okay.
And portion of it was from state.
All right.
And we've gotten all of it.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. 2024 Silverado 3500 tentative delivery date is mid to end July. New grading is started on Fowler, Canoe Hill, Andrew Heat Kennels for the April 14th marathon.
All right. Mhm.
4,000 gallon gas tank, getting a preliminary prices for removal of the old tank and installing a new 500 gallon tank between Highway Park Transfer Station. We use approximately 500 gallons per year. Goes back talking about the Bridge New York paperwork for local agreement was submitted on March 6th to New York State DOT. Paperwork is in queue, can take 2 to 4 weeks to get to the governor's office, then 1 to 2 months turnaround. So, which is why the county gave us preliminary go-ahead, okay? So, on April 2nd, we received authorization to proceed to preliminary design and right-of-way incidentals. Okay, and I have that letter if anybody wants to review it.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it for Joe's report.
I think Jonathan needs to go. You sure? Bank reconciliations for the checking and savings accounts for February are all completed. I've begun working on March's. Everything looks good. I have a few more to do. This transfer station invoicing receipts are posted. The monthly revenue from the Justice Court has been received through February of 2024, so there's been some catching up. The building department's March report has been received, and the town clerk's audit report for March has been received. We received the donation from Dutchess Day School for $3,500 in lieu of their pilot for, yeah. I have submitted the federal and state payroll quarterly returns. And then I have to file the ARPA compliance report by the end of this month. And then I have here just information that I found that we have to be in contract by December 31st, 2024. So if we're not in contract to do the roof or whatever else, then we have to return those funds.
Okay.
So we have to get into contract. I gave you an updated sheet, Excel sheet, showing the balances, what we spent. And so there's 40,000 still allocated to this building and 40 to the park. Part of it was blacktopping. I think we had obligated and improvements up at the park. So I know we need to do some blacktopping up there.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
but yeah.
Okay, good.
And I think that's just about it. Yes, short and sweet.
That's good. Yeah, appreciate that.
I really don't live an exciting life, you know,
but-
in the bookkeeping department. Those bank recs come in and I'm sorry. Every day. Yeah.
Thanks, Laura.
Yep.
So Leslie did a great job. I want to thank you for doing that.
Oh.
You
My-
you carried the room well. And they all, everybody appreciated it.
Oh,
So,
thanks, Gary.
It was a nice
You've
job.
done, I mean, Joe and Mike and you and Bob, it's been a team
Yeah. No,
team
thank you.
effort, and it's great to get everybody's feedback, and we'll figure out what the next.
But your
steps
opening
are.
comments were really right on target. And, I think it cleared up a lot of questions that people had.
Yeah, I think that I think that the sign was confusing.
Right. For sure.
For people.
To be polite.
Yeah. All right, Danielle.
Okay,
You have the floor.
talking about blacktopping, I'd like to thank the highway department. They came to the park and they patched up some bad spots just in time for the marathon.
For the race, yeah.
So it looks really nice and I appreciate them getting to that so quickly. You all received a new lease for Lyle Church for the preschool.
Mhm.
So I think that we need a resolution for that to be signed.
Motion.
The motion to.
I'll make the
to
motion.
sign, Yeah,
Have that contract
absolutely.
signed.
Yeah, absolutely.
That will preserve our
I'll
ability to
second
run
it.
our program up there for next year.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Water Park has, oh, thank you.
Hey, Bob.
Water at the park has been turned on and Matt was able to do that with Steve Kane
Call.
helping him. Was it?
Steve Call.
Steve Cole.
Beaver.
Beaver.
Yeah.
There was an issue with some vandalism in the bathroom, but that has been taken care of.
The building's been locked since we turned the water off. But we believe someone has a key and has gotten in there and has used it over the winter time. So it was not in very good shape to be turned back on, needed a lot of cleaning in order to activate the system. So my recommendation to Danielle, and we'll talk about it, is to put a padlock on it. You know, we can lock the doors during the season, but when that is shut down, we'll put a padlock on it. and lock
Yeah.
it.
Well, there was some vandalism up at the
We're not-
soccer field. So
We're not sure of that, was either vandalism or heavy winds that knocked the thing over. We're not sure.
And he was
yeah,
there.
but the windows were open.
Yeah,
Somebody definitely did.
but they didn't get inside, no. Right.
We don't think.
Well, if they did, they didn't take anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the grant project, we received 2 bids for the renovation at the park. The bids are much higher than what we expected. I spoke to Mike Paratakis from Dutchess County Planning and Development, and he was in agreement that we should rebid it. And we're gonna just tweak a few things, and Lodi and I are gonna work on tweaking things and then go out to bid again for that.
Good.
The only problem with that is that we really can't start work on that with the timeline of how long it takes to go out to bid and get those bids in. Can't really start it until after camp. So we can start as of August 5th.
What happened? I thought we put that out to bid last year, and then we did they not? Did it take, maybe I'm getting confused.
So there, we went out to bid
Yeah.
for an engineer. We got that.
Okay,
and Ed Lodi.
okay.
And then Ed Lodi,
Expected.
created the RFPs for this.
Right, okay.
And, it had to be reviewed by the county, and you guys all have copies of those too. I think those in your
Yeah.
box. We were way off by like 60,000 net.
And one person came and looked at it, but didn't bid, but those that bid had not did not come to the
Do you
show.
do a spreadsheet like, this contractor paid or proposed this much, and then this contractor proposed this much? Do you do like a spreadsheet and what came in? You know, like, are each of the contractors, are their prices per item similar, or did they break it
So
down?
it wasn't broken down
It
by
wasn't
each
broken
item.
out.
So there's a base price, and then we had 4 alternate things.
Because that
So
way,
now
yeah.
Michael did say that he
If you
suggested.
break it down per item, that way you can find out what is the problem, and that's easier to ditch.
Well, one of them was, I think, $8,000 for a folding door, and the other one was $80,000. So
Yeah.
it was the
Really?
same door that it was being
Yeah.
bid on.
Two
so-
bidders didn't even come and look at the site.
I know,
Yeah.
no.
Only one came, another person came but didn't bid.
So, gee whiz, you can almost ditch the $80,000 and accept the contract.
Yeah, we're gonna take out the partition door. They suggested that we just focus
Back to
on
basics and
ADA.
build on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it. Thank you.
Wow, thank you.
By the way, congratulations again to Recreation for the Easter egg hunt. They had a great turnout. They had to postpone it, move it forward because of the rain and so
Yeah.
on, so that went well. Basketball, we've gotten nothing but good feedback. I know Leslie has sent a thank you letter to the board at Dutchess Day. But the parents were thrilled with the facility, the parking. And we've got to make some tweaks on changeover, because as one group comes in, while others are playing, the parking lots really get congested. So we'll make more of a gap between the sessions. But it's good. And summer's moving ahead well.
I'll be here before we go.
I've done 2 boxes of unopened boxes of or deflated soccer balls that I think Andrew bought when he was coaching to have extra balls in case they needed extra balls. So I meant to bring them tonight.
Sure. Okay.
I mean, not that you want them in your office now, but anyway.
Well, I can put
We
They're
can
like
put 'em
in
up-
the box,
we
yeah,
can put 'em up
they're
next
in the
year.
box. They're just, the box has never been opened.
That's great.
Like,
Yeah,
there's
thank
a
you.
bunch of balls in there.
Can have Matt Storm.
Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate that. Jonathan?
Yep. So. Yeah. Still past my bedtime. Happens to me all the time. So, no, for the month of March, I did 25 inspections and site visits. 13 building permits were issued, 3 building permits were renewed. Issued 5 certificates of occupancy, 2 certificates of compliance. There were 2 expired building permits at the end of March. One of them's been taken care of. The other one's in the process of being taken care of. There were 3 new building complaints in March. One was for a roof being installed without a building permit, and one was done on an expired permit, which was one of the expired. Both of which were instigated by me. The roof was taken care of. He came in, filled out the building permit application, paid the fees, so he's good. The other one paid his fees for the expired permit. He's taken care of. The third complaint was for an owner with multiple structures that are rented out. One of the tenants complained that work had been done there without permits and in an unsafe manner. I've tried reaching out to the owner of the property to no avail. So I'll be sending letters out through certified mail to the address on record, and hopefully get a response to keep investigating and pursue this. For zoning, 3 municipal searches were completed. 1 FOIL request was received and completed. I got a zoning complaint for, what's that? I'm sorry, the zoning complaint from February is still open, but I have been in contact with the owner. The tenants at the property are cleaning it up and are starting to work on it. I gave them a deadline by middle of this month to take care of it. I will make sure it's done. If it's not, then I will pursue further action if needed.
I see they're starting to clean it up.
It's starting to get it.
Yeah.
So
Is that the obvious one?
that is
Yeah.
the
Okay.
elephant in the room one.
Okay, so
Yeah. So
All right.
he's had numerous, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had numerous back and forth with him. So basically after having a lengthy phone conversation with him, told him, get it done, or this is the last time that it will be a simple compliance order remedy.
I think we just need to establish that it's bothering the town residents.
Multiple,
because I have
yeah.
been stopped at least 4 times before this meeting.
It's the gateway to the community.
Is there
Yeah.
anything we can do about that? And I said, we are on it. That was my response.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I basically explained that to him in the nicest way possible and told him that this is the last time it'll be handled with a letter. If it's not taken care of, or if it doesn't stay taken care of, then I will pursue further action.
Okay.
So,
Good.
and I had 2 other zoning complaints. One was for a fence that was found to be in compliance, and the other one I'm still currently investigating. So,
Thank you, John.
Jonathan, do you see us getting a little bit more busy than we have in the past?
Yeah.
Starting to turn around a little bit?
yeah,
Good.
so it's definitely, which helps too, is it's becoming construction season, so there's a lot of
Good.
uptick.
Good, good.
So,
Thank you, John, for the report. Leslie, you want to give us your report?
Sure. So I have my standard workday and reporting resolution for elected and appointed officials that I'd like to present to you. It is
Thanks, John.
for myself and Joe Spagnola, and it is just the amount of days we work a month, the past 3 months. So I have to present this to you, post it on the website and in the office for 30 days.
What's it for?
A record of the elected officials, just reporting that how many days they've worked and
Okay.
yeah, that they've been working.
Is this for retirement?
Yes.
It goes to retirement, and I think it also has to go to the state.
I think it,
Did we get
right.
that too?
No. Chrissy does the.
I thought it was,
Like
yeah,
Gary or somebody?
just to keep track as
I
well.
think it's more of
Like-
retirement because, Chrissy and Joe are still with the retirement. Those elected officials that are not participating in retirement or have retired already do not have to.
Is that applicable to our judge also? That's an
Yes,
elected
but
official in the
she
town?
is not
I was.
on retirement.
Right.
Okay, all right.
And I'm officially retired.
Thank you for clarification, Lola.
Hey, Lois, I have a question.
Okay.
You know, all the years that I've been in the village and with the town, I never got in the retirement system. Is it too late to get in? Can you buy into it?
You can buy
You can
into
buy
it.
into it. You can definitely buy into it.
You would have to,
It's a big job.
you would have to,
How'd you not get into it, Gary? Wouldn't they have him sign in the?
Because
When
I
I
remember
started, Mary gave me something that I filled out. I didn't,
when I asked that earlier strictly because when I was on deputy mayor,
mhm.
I was in the retirement system. I would get something back from the controller.
Yeah, I never got in.
And, because and I'm not sure at the time when I was a state worker that it was just, added on or whatever.
Right,
But I was in it as an elected
Right.
official. Granted, it's very small,
right.
very
So you got
small,
your service credit.
but I got my service credits
Right.
for that.
So that's what it's called.
And I
It's
think I
called
still get it
service
for the town of
credits.
Washington, if I'm not mistaken. I can look from the state, from the town, the controller, like I'm almost certain I can.
Because I know that you're not
Mhm.
obviously participating more because you're officially retired.
Right,
But you can, it would be a lot of work,
yeah,
because of so many years of your service credits, you would have to try to figure
you can
out.
definitely buy it back.
You can
Gary.
buy it back.
Your
It's
controller's
called
office
service
can help you with that.
But, buying it back and outweighing how much time they would count, you have to look
Right.
into that.
Okay.
And it's actually, your service credits are, an after-tax So it doesn't reduce your income a little bit because it's an after-tax deduction. Because retirement, when you go into the retirement system, it reduces your federal income tax a little bit. So it's a pre-tax deduction, but service credits are not. Just to confuse you.
Thank you.
Do you do taxes on the side?
No. I don't even do.
You might want to start.
No, I used to do our own and it just.
Yeah.
it's too
Go ahead,
much.
Christie, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So March taxes have been reconciled. I have also received the final contract from Granicus. All parties have signed, sealed, delivered, and it's on file in the clerk's office. There's an ethics committee for new employee. There's an ethics committee meeting scheduled for new employees next Tuesday, the 16th at 10 a.m. We have about 8 new employees coming.
Okay.
And yeah. And also I'm working with Heather on the Justice Court audits as well. So hopefully by noon tomorrow, we'll have that March one done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, getting back to like the Collier's contract, so when Gary signs it, it also has to be notarized, just to give everybody a heads up for that before it comes back, right? And then we also have a meeting scheduled, you're aware of the 17th?
I'm not going to be in town.
Okay.
Kristen's going to be at that
Kristen's gonna
meeting.
be, but that's, on the books that's gonna take place.
Right.
Okay.
And she's aware of it and it's on her
Okay.
calendar. So if there's anything you need for that meeting,
Keep it pencil.
just email her.
Okay, so I'll just give the zoning board meeting held, their meeting on 19th of March. The meeting was called to order at the new time at 6 o'clock. One item was on the agenda, a proposed new shed application at 48 Shunpike Road. Eric Alexander and Marcia DeVoe participated via Zoom. They are seeking a 19-foot front yard setback variance to put a shed on property. They will require electric hookup. The proposed shed will be used as an art studio. Public hearing was opened and closed with no comments from the public. Motion to declare this as a type 2 action under secret was approved. The requested variance was also approved. The continuing Yadgard pool application was delayed as the transcript of the last hearing was not delivered in a timely manner. A motion was made to change the time of the ZBA meeting to 6:30. So this is the second time that they are changing from 7:30, then they changed to 6. Now they want it to start at 6:30.
Don't need a variance.
So a motion was passed, and granted. So meeting was adjourned at 6:09.
Wow, good. Thank you. Okay, Leslie.
So I am reporting on the planning board. I was not at the meeting, so I'm working on their minutes and feedback that I got from committee members. They met, the planning board met last Tuesday, April 2nd. They heard 4 different applications. The first was the Gonzalez application. That's at 3707 Route 44. That's a special use permit for a service business. And it was going to be referred to county, but it was delayed because the board requested some additional information on their plans, specifically how the applicant would treat a rear parking lot. He wants to move the parking from right along the road to the rear. There's room to do it, but the planning board asked for site disturbance info necessary to do that, erosion controls, etc. And they've scheduled a public hearing on that matter for next month. The second application was for 199 Milewood Road. The applicant seeks site plan approval to replace and expand an existing screened-in porch. The ZBA granted the variance necessary for the porch and a special permit for an increase of 25% conditional. So they were seeking, a special permit for an increase of 25% conditional on receipt of the site plan approval from the planning board. So Michael Sloan was there to appear on behalf of the property owners. It was classified as a type 2 action under seeker, and that has been set for a public hearing for next month. Milko and Christy Milkoff on 55 Deheim Road. Their architect appeared on their behalf. This is for site plan approval to expand and renovate an existing residence. The ZBA has granted variances and a special permit conditioned on the planning board's granting of site plan approval. They moved to sign the survey. So they actually approved the site plan at this meeting. Then the fourth was a workshop for Thomas and Elizabeth Mulvey on Nabbotsville Road. They had someone who appeared on their behalf. The application is for site plan approval in connection with the project to add new living space above the garage. The ZBA already granted a variance and a special permit, again conditioned on the planning board site plan approval. And they have set a public hearing for that next month. And then the last item on the agenda, there were two things that they discussed. One was discussion of a clear subdivision application. I guess the application has been withdrawn by the applicant. The previously adopted neg deck becomes void. And then they also discussed the draft of the hospitality law, concerns raised regarding the change in this draft, which restricts the adaptive reuse. This will inhibit reuse of older buildings. So the planning board, and I did speak with Susan Meany about it, was concerned that our proposal was too restrictive. And I explained that, you know, the town is trying to legislate based on the report, which 20 rooms was where people wanted, right? But they were also in favor of adaptive reuse. We were in an effort to be reasonable, since the Cottonwood already had 20 rooms and the Millbrook Training Center, which when it was in had rooms, and Daytop had 37 rooms, to give them some flexibility, but we're not interested in giving them flexibility to expand beyond what's already there. So she understood that when I explained that. And board agrees the language in section, there was some inconsistency in the language. I think the draft that they had was the old one, the planning board. So we submitted and posted the correct, it was just typos and things like that that were fixed. And then Emily Abrams from the planning board noted section 4 of the draft amendment refers to this land conservation zone, which doesn't exist. And that's throughout our entire code. And that's being addressed when we make our changes to the entire general code, which is a separate exercise that I have yet to get to with Kyle and the task force, because we've been focused on the hospitality overlay, but that is referred to the land conservation zone throughout our code. It just needs to be removed because it doesn't. Once we adopted the wetlands law, it's obsolete. So that's it from the planning board. And then the CAC did not meet because of the storm, that big storm last week. They did send a letter to the planning board with a comment about one of these proposals from Nabbotsville, just asking them to keep in mind the zoning in Nabbotsville with the 50%, the residential versus the business zoning. So that was accepted by the planning board. They appreciated the feedback. NRI, as we all know, is part of the hospitality overlay. A resident asked me, why is the NRI not standing alone in its own legislation? Jim Stout said, doesn't matter whether it's on 2 pieces of paper or one, once it's adopted as part of our code, it's part of our code. And it was connected, but very intricately with the addendum requesting and with the original comp plan. So because of that, he felt like it made sense, and he's done this with other municipalities, included it. So anyway, wanted to mention that we have the NRI ready to go to E-code to post it so that it can be referenced online, but that has to all go in. E-code, just to remind, is the company that Mary had retained to put all of our code online. And it's almost like working with any consultant or lawyer or anybody. Like every time we go back to them, it would cost more for us to go back kind of just here and there. We want to kind of go back with everything all at once. And so that's why we haven't just sent them that to post it, because they have a whole sequence of how they get information from us. So they're going to give us a firmer quote on what it would, because they worked with their internal counsel, legal counsel, worked with Mary and Sarah Wilson from Vanderwater on it. They've done a lot of what the task force was working on. So anyway, it's a longer story, but we're getting to that. And we have the hard copy of the NRI, and we have all the PDFs available for the town boards to look at if they need to. So
Do we have to wait until the law is adopted before we can?
No, so the resolution basically gave those boards the permission to use them as legitimate resources for the town.
Okay.
Adopting it as part of the code is going to require them to look at them.
Okay.
That's the distinction. But
All right.
we couldn't make that kind of requirement
So they
in a
can-
resolution.
They
We
can
had
review
to.
it, but right now they have the choice, but then they.
Right now, yes, we're basically saying these are here, and they're all excited to
As a
use
reference,
them as their reference document. But once it's adopted, they have to
They
use
need
them.
to look at it. Okay.
Yeah. So that's it for me.
Good, thanks. Mike, when we go into executive session, are we gonna need to have Kyle here, or can we?
For probably just the first minute.
Mine.
No, not at all. We just need clarification on something.
Okay. So Bob, you wanna share anything with us tonight? Can't hear you.
No, I guess, I sent you all an email with what was going on.
Yep.
We still need to find a plumber for for our buildings. I guess the two people, that said they were interested aren't interested, don't respond, so.
Bob Dunlap didn't wanna do it?
No.
Huh?
Ask Danielle. He said he never talked to you.
Talked to him 3 times.
Maybe he doesn't know your name.
He bought a car from him.
Anyway, we'll get it figured out.
Okay.
And we're working on a list to go to bid on the roof. And, Joe was good enough to get some patches up at the park for now. Steve Kale was nice enough to help Matt get the water on, since the plumber who said he would do it never showed up. And, the drain for the pool, Joe is going to finish the clean out of the pool drain that's on the west side of the park. And we'll put the fence back up before camp begins. I guess Danielle had someone do the sand filter already, right, Danielle?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, we're in good shape. We'll get the pool filled, get the pump going, and they have to order a little more chlorine to get started. And I think we'll be in good shape.
Okay. Terrific.
Matt's doing a great job on stuff.
Good.
Staying busy.
Yep. Thanks, Bob. Mike.
In the February meeting, I reminded the board that we were having difficulty connecting the fees collected in the court with the state, because we had a substitute judge in, and we finally had rectified that. So Lois has given me the final report for 2023. The total deposits in 2023 from the court were $54,622, of which 12,000 of that amount went to the state, 3,375 went to the village, and 38,487 went to the town. And because we absorb all the expenses for the court, $38,000 doesn't even wash it. So again, and I know the mayor has asked for a meeting on the court system, so we'll have to move forward on that.
Okay.
Dovetailing, Heather had given me a report from February 29th through March 31st. There were 29 total cases for the court. She said that's been about normal. One thing we've run into, the letters that she has been sending out reminding people that they're in arrears on previous fines, particularly the parking fines and so on in the village. There's some wording in there that's a little questionable. So we have to rewrite the letters because an observation was made by the judge, and also I think she got advice on it that we're claiming some follow through that we may not be allowed to do. So she's going to rework it and send it out, because when she had sent the original letters prior to this heads up, we were collecting quite a bit of money that was in arrears, but we've got to go back to the drawing board and try and figure that out. And as far as recreation, I have a meeting scheduled next week down in Fishkill with the Fishkill rep director. I want to meet with him and talk with him about how they secure their parks with gates and unmanned entry and exiting. And also, I have followed up with Rhinebeck on their pickleball engineers. I will do the same with Fishkill. Once I get that information, and when Bobby gets back, we're going to do a complete walkthrough of our facility, identifying locations that need upgrade, new programs, and perhaps new opportunities up there like pickleball. And then ask those people to come up with some recommended projected cost on that. So then we can then turn to maybe the public and say, this is what we'd like to do. And if the public would like to participate, maybe like Stanford did, we form a separate 501c3 and we start to collect some donations and maybe get that done. As was mentioned during this testimony, things are getting old, and we don't want to be faced with a Bennett.
For sure. Good.
And just to add, we did have a resident come in and say, why don't we have pickleball courts, right?
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she goes,
Yeah.
Stanford has it, like, we're working on it.
It's the latest rage.
Yeah.
The new
We're gonna
baseball.
put lines
Yeah.
on the basketball court at the park. So
Yeah, the
people
old
can
court up
use-
there.
What's that?
We're going to line that court up there as a
Danielle
pickleball
was
court.
just telling us.
But we have
Don't
to,
worry, I know how it goes.
we have to get a fence. And I had Danielle look at the fence that the Duchess Day put around their pond to prevent soccer balls from going into it. It doesn't look like it would require a lot of work or a lot of effort. It wouldn't be spectacular, but it would serve the purpose of preventing balls from going into our catch pond.
Did that cover it, Danielle, or did you want to say anything else? Okay, all right.
Lynette, be available or do I?
Not for you. There's already enough there.
I know you have a travel kit.
Okay, we're all covered. Howard, did you want to say anything before we go to executive session?
Well, the same question I always ask you. You don't want to do anything after you come out.
No, we're gonna go home.
Good for you.
Oh, we sign bills.
Yeah, after we do the bills. Thanks for your comments.
I would like to say something offhand. It's really refreshing to see these small town meetings, everybody get together and different viewpoints and so on. And people who don't live in a small town don't know what that's like.
Very true.
It's very nice.
Yep. Okay.
We go into executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night. Thanks, Dan.
Bye,
Thank you.
Danielle. Thank you.
both.
Joe, you second?
Have a good night.
Yes.
Bye-bye.